Okay, welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to do a quick lighting lesson here, kind of building upon the previous lesson on lighting, okay? Lighting is all about the values you use. It's not about the media. So I did, kind of a little bit of a longer video last time demonstrating two different mediums, okay, in the dye-based inks and the colored pencils on this one right here. Just showing you, how to develop and how to retain lighting in a couple different areas of your scenes. Now, in this case, it happens to be a little bit lighter on the rooftop here, but for the most part, it's light, dark, and light like that, okay? And the reason why these areas are light are just simply because we've retained the lightness of it. We haven't just colored it all over, seen our different sections as entire areas to be colored and to be approached uniformly, okay? They're varied like that. Now, looking at a scene like this one right here, we have a light source, a formal light source in this piece. But where do you leave this area down here? Now, most people coming from sectional coloring, okay, it means that we see entire spaces as one area to be colored uniformly, okay? You can use all of your color sensibilities that you have in applying colors, blending colors, everything with whatever media you're using, but you're just adding something else to it. You're creating a varied terrain or a varied value scale in each of your areas here. So you can color, but just don't color as much and create your transitions, okay? It means that you're making kind of a greater use of your media that you happen to be working in. So in other words, whatever color that I happen to be using, I'll use it from its full saturation to a medium saturation, meaning a drier version of it, to an even drier one, and all the way to where it's really dry and you can barely see it when you're applying it, okay? So what you're doing is you're making use of this type of ability right here, okay? And all media can do this type of thing. It goes from dark, medium to light like that, okay? And that's a different feeling for most people, in terms of a lot of the different types of coloring that we would do in stamping. Meaning, I don't know what percentage of designs out there are now kind of outline styles of designs as opposed to tonal, but there's a lot of them out there. So there's a lot of kind of, built-in kind of firm types of notions on coloring now because of that type of design, okay? Now, on something like this, I've kind of laid out some colors right here with what I think are going from kind of light to medium to darker values, okay? So here's a blue colored scheme, and I like to do my moonlight types of scenes in a bluish, cool colored scheme for the most part. But let's throw in a little twist. On one of my other videos, I showed how antique linen can be kind of a base layer tone, and it's a warm tone for any other types of colors to come. Now, it's not just antique linen, but it's pretty much any color that's really, really super light in value. So even though there's a temperature change going from something warm, okay, and we'll be moving into colors, cooler colors here, but because this is so light in value, you can get away with it. So if you had a super light green, you can use that. I don't know if I would use an orange and blue together or something like that, something that's so kind of different on the color wheel than this. But see this right here? It's just not a huge commitment to a specific hue, but it's just more of kind of a general warmth to it. So antique linen, there's a lot of distress inks that can be used for this because a lot of them are very light in value. They're not supposed to be super intense in terms of their relative brightness, okay? Brightness, not lightness. Okay, brightness is the relative intensity of it. Lightness is the relative, light and dark of it. All right. So this really makes for a great color, okay? And you can use, antique linen straight from your pad here, or you can even, if you don't have that, I hardly ever make impressions with antique linen. In fact, I never do. So one of the things you can do is just get the re-inker for it. And what you do is you just put, maybe a drop of it on whatever your applicator is. I'm using a paper towel. You can use a sponge applicator or something like that, whatever you want to do, cotton ball. And you can just go like that, and it's really great for base layers. Okay, now here's the thing. We're going to make use of our media here, okay? So on something like this, there's no definitive area where it's like, okay, that's, the moon's going to be light up there. So I don't want to put too much tone over it. I might put a little bit of this antique linen over a little bit of it, but I think I want to retain most of the lightness of it. Well, I retained about half of it, I should say, okay? I put a little bit at the bottom of it. You can do top and bottom, middle, whatever, but just leave some of that white in there, just so you can have a full spectrum going from white to dark, okay? In this case, we'll be going to black. But down here in the meadow, here's how I'm going to approach it. There's like a ridge right here, and then there's a distant area of grass in the background, right? Okay, now here's the thing. There's no set thing that you have to abide by in something like this. There's no right or wrong in here. But what we do want to do is oscillate our lights and darks within this given space, and maybe that distant space in there. So you can almost see it as sky and grass down here. But if you want to kind of bisect this grass and make it more interesting, you can see that area behind the horse as a more distant area, representing 3 different spaces, 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you don't do that, that's fine. But here's what I'm going to do here. When you have some kind of subject matter in the scene like that, it just kind of makes sense to throw a spotlight on that area. So what I'm going to do with this is I will go up to that horse like so with some of this ink. It's not so much important with this first ink because it is so light, but our darker colors, we will leave this area in here, largely untouched, with the darkest colors. You can come in there with the medium tones or whatnot. Okay, so I'm coming in like this. Now, I don't know if you can even see it, but that's what makes this first ink color really good. Look at this, it's even kind of picking up some of my Marvy black, but that's fine. Okay, but anyways, okay, so here in the background, I will put in a little bit of tone like this, just to get some color in the background. Remember, we have a lot of colors to come. But here's what it's looking like right now. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of light right here. Now that's, like I said, it's not wrong. This could have been dark and this could have been light. But the thing that's happening in here is there's this oscillation. There's a little bit of color here, a little bit less here, a little bit less here, color, lighter, because I want to keep that horse kind of spotlit. A little bit of tone in the background. But look at this. Everything around this moon has been colored with a little bit of that color in between. Sometimes if I don't put in this lightest color over my light sources, they look a little bit too stark white. That's why I like to put a little bit of tone over it. Okay, but do you see this area right in here where it's a little bit lighter? Now, that was easy to do, okay? It's just kind of establishing. You can think about it like a checkerboard, where you're just establishing kind of light and dark oscillations, okay? Now, not all of them have to be the same. You could have an area that's really light, small, and then the next area next to it could be large, and it could be really, big light. Or the opposite, a field of darkness, and then a small area of light. They could be equal. It doesn't matter, okay? All right, but we do have, a decent number of colors to go through here, okay? So that's why your base layer coloring gets the most amount of coverage, okay? So, that's it. So, that's the most amount of coverage that we're going to be doing. It's not like, okay, oh my gosh, the rest of these colors are going to be so hard. We're just going to be using less and less of these as we go along, okay? So let's do this. Okay, now that's the last of the kind of warm tones that I'll be using on here. So let's go to distress ink. I know a lot of you have distress inks, so let's use some of that. Okay, and I'll put a drop of this on here. I don't have the tumbled glass pad, again, because I would never make an impression using this color. It's just simply too light, but it's a really great color to add in during your toning process. I love the dull, kind of aged, weathered look of the distress inks. They make great complements to the very bright colors of Marvy, the deep saturated tones of Marvy, okay? But Not a lot of you have Marvy inks, but I'd really recommend you throwing in, you know, a pad or 3 or 4. I think 8, to 10 colors of Marvy inks would be really good, even if you just get the re-inkers for it, okay? Because nothing is going to get as bright of a saturated mark as your Marvies. But I'm not going to use too many of these on this one because I just want you to, I'm going to throw the Caribbean blue in there because I just don't have another color like that. There are other colors so-called like that, but they're not going to be as bright, and I want a bright component in this scene right here. It's not a bright make or break type of thing. Okay, so here's the tumbled glass, but you see what I'm doing? I'm generally, now it doesn't, where I said you kind of use a little bit less and less and less of your colors as you go along. It doesn't mean you can't go into that light area, okay? But here's where people kind of, when they're first starting to do this, kind of, err. And I'd rather them do this than to approach something real gingerly and kind of, fearfully, okay? See, I used a little bit of this color in here, but a lot of times when they move into these, they're getting the feel for color application, usually, at first, when doing this type of thing right here. They're not used to coloring color over color over color over color, doing like, I don't know, 6 layers of color, okay? They're used to using one color and filling in a certain space, that one color. Okay, but getting the feel for this is, it's super easy. It's like finger painting. But sometimes what they do is when they move into your darker colors, and then they're getting really used to this, and then they just come in here and they fill it all in, okay? So just keep that in mind and put the breaks around your lighter areas, okay? All right, now I don't think the summer sky is going to show up at all, so let's just move on to a darker tone. I'm not even sure what color this weathered wood is. I don't know if I've used it very much. Let me test it out right here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's almost like a blue-gray. Huh. That's a nice color. I've had this pad for a long time, but I don't know. I haven't used it too much. Okay, now this isn't, it's not very much of a value change here. It has that distress quality, though, and that kind of weathered look, Now, when I was talking about the Marvy inks and being bright, distress inks aren't supposed to be bright. They're supposed to look all aged and weathered. But I do like that. I like a range of intensity. So these are very dull in terms of their intensity, which they're supposed to be. But if you want to have a nice range of things, in the visual language and color language, there's intensity as one of them. There's temperature, hue, and value, okay? So I like having a range of all that because when you have a range of things, and especially when it comes to lighting, you have dark to light, okay? It can just contribute to a much richer end result and surface, okay? Rather than having everything mono-value, monotone, monochromatic. This is monochromatic, but I have a little bit of a change of temperature in here now. But can you see that at all? Can you see that warmth in there? But otherwise, this would be all blue tones in there. So you see what that type of layering can do. The layering of that antique linen is right underneath there. You can see that warmth showing through. What do we have? 2 layers of blue so far. But that's what you get with the dye-based inks and what you can do with that. But you can also kind of layer, different types of temperatures using colored pencils and whatnot. It's different, in terms of the end result and look, but, you can benefit from that. Let's try the Caribbean blue here. So every time I change colors, I use it in a small space like this. The paper is starting to get, especially on glossy cardstock, I feel this kind of super saturation starting to take place, okay, because I've done this, quite a few times, as you might imagine. Not the scene, but just the layering process. So I know what happens, especially when I use re-inkers like that. I apply a lot of ink, when I'm doing the re-inker method, because you take and you apply a lot more ink at one time, even if it's just one drop of that, like we did. So what I'm doing, that being said, when I apply my ink, it's not transferring as fast, okay, as it did when this paper was completely dry, okay? When it's dry, your paper is kind of absorbing a lot of that moisture faster, and that's how dye-based inks work. They stain. They work by staining the surface. So, you know, so that being said, what you have to do is you have to kind of tap around and kind of build up your color buildups a little bit longer because it's not penetrating. You know, we're starting to achieve super saturation here. We're not applying into a puddle of ink or anything like that, or puddle of moisture, but there is quite a bit in there, okay? But do you see that lighting starting to happen now? You know, we have this light source. It goes dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. So this is oscillation in here. So basically what I did in this scene right here, there's light, dark, light. But you see, here's dark, or light, dark. But see, this area right here is light, but I just bisected it with a little bit more. So, I mean, you can divide up your lighting down here however way you want it to go. And none of it, as long as there's this oscillation, I would say none of it really looks incorrect, because lighting looks different, depending on the hills or whatever. There's just, an infinite number of things you could have done. It could have been light over here and dark over here, light up there, dark over here, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Again, just as long as there's, it's varied, okay? It just looks much richer. Okay, this is Memento Bahama Blue. I didn't think this would, show up too much, but it is on here, okay? Now, the darker we go, kind of the less I apply because I become a little bit more perimeter oriented. I don't go into the scene quite as much as I did with the lighter tones, okay? Because I want that transition. I want it to go from light to dark. So when you're using dark, you just don't go in there quite as far, right? So you just stay on the outside longer, like this. I'm looking at this thing, too. I think I might use a little bit of green. You wouldn't see that at nighttime. You wouldn't see color, but I think I want to do that. I have another, what is that, greenish tinge distress ink. Is it peeled paint? Peeled paint. Look at this one right here. Okay, but let's just keep, using our blues still, okay? Now, when you start building up colors like this, one of the things that you'll find is the more ink that you lay down, especially with your first couple of colors, by the time I get to this color, you can kind of do whatever you want because it's just a little bit darker than the previous color. Plus, everything is so saturated, you can use horrible, horrible technique, and it doesn't even show, okay? And it's because everything blends so easily. But if you do this, okay, type of technique right here, don't try to get to this color so fast, okay? Just work it through your other tones, and plus, look at that beautiful glow that you have from the use of all those undercolors being applied first. It's a much different color than, let's just take this color right now. Now, I have a lot of colors on here, but they're not layered, but I'll show you just what this color looks like, okay? Just on its own. I mean, it's a good color, the Memento Bahama Blue. But look at that look right there. This looks like so much different than this in here, okay? See that right there? This, just on its own, if we went straight to that, looks a little anemic. So look at all those tones underneath there. We have Caribbean blue and antique linen, and so on and so forth. So see that difference right there? It's a big difference, and we're not even done here, okay? We had the weathered wood in there. Let's go to the Marvy Prussian Blue. I was thinking maybe I should go with the peeled paint first. The Prussian Blue is really, really dark. Let's go to the Prussian Blue first. Okay, let me grab another paper towel here. Okay, let's go to the peeled paint. It's a pretty warm tone. Okay, it's, I don't know, it's almost like that olive looking, but it's a little bit more yellowish. Okay. Okay, so let's use a little bit. I'm going to start off in my darker areas and kind of creep that into the lighter area like so. Okay, meaning I'll just kind of put a little bit of that application of it over there first and then kind of bring it into, that's better than just going straight in there. Okay, maybe I won't put it everywhere. I'll just kind of go like that a little bit, like so. Look at that. That makes a big difference, doesn't it? See how I kind of just gradually build it in? Just like I'm doing everything, I'm gradually building up the colors like that. But look at this too. Now see, I didn't cover up anything, but I still have the benefit of the warmth, but I still have the benefit of the lightness because I didn't cover it all up in there. Okay. Now this is a fairly light color again too, so it's not making a big change value-wise. Okay. I'll put a little bit, behind the horse like that in the distance. All right. So see that right there? When you use your colors kind of strategically, as opposed to kind of 100% version of it all the time, you can really use it a lot more strategically and to your advantage because you have in one pad a range of tones as opposed to that one color. Okay. All right. So let's go back to our blue tones. All right, I think that added a lot to it. Okay, now Prussian blue is pretty dark. Okay, ooh, it's really dark. Okay, Prussian blue is one of the darkest blues out there, and I love blue tones, especially for scenes. Being a scenic stamper, imagine just how much blue opportunities there are in scenes. Okay. I think Prussian blue is what I stamped the Erie Moon in as well, so using that same color within the space kind of blends it with the perimeter as well. So, the perimeter of the design, you stamp it out in that color, tone it in with that same color, and it blends it into the piece a lot more gracefully. Okay. All right, so coming in, you can decide how much of this you want to bring in, but again, I'm not bringing in this version of it. I'm bringing in this version, okay? Because see this, when I'm starting over here, it's darker, and then I go lighter like that. Okay, I'll bring it into the terrain, the meadow, the grassy slope down here. I like to tip my corners right here. 4 corners, darker top and left and right. Okay. And the bottom left and right. I wouldn't use too much over here. If that moon was over there another ½ inch, I wouldn't darken that too much because it would be right next to my light source. But here's what this does here. The darker you take an area of your scene, in this case it's, kind of around the perimeter, creating a strong vignette. The darker you take your areas in there, the lighter, by contrast, your light sources or your reflected light will seem. All right, so that was working through the color. Let's go to black because I did stamp my images in black, and just like the moon blended in really well with another Prussian blue toning. All these objects down here are stamped in black, so I like to utilize black in my piece to kind of frame things off and to create additional shadows. Okay. Now this is black, so it's really dark, so again, I'm going to stay a little bit more, or a lot more, perimeter oriented in terms of my application of it. The darker you go, you kind of go in less and less, okay? So, when it comes to black, now I don't want to just stay in one place and just go like this, okay? And create a hard black application and then nothing. We still want to go, with that transition right here. So what you do is you kind of tap it like this, and then you kind of come into it, as this gets dry, And that way I get this nice transitioning application of black. And then, you know, grays and everything like that. But you see this right here? How it's just transitioning into it like that? Okay, so let's do it up here, or corner. I think my black pad is super wet right now, but there's some pretty good control over it. And plus, the paper, the scene right here is fairly moist, so even if I don't get something that I don't want, you know, really hard like that, that just blends right in because the surface is moist and we're applying wet into wet right there, okay? And that makes it easy to blend. Now, if you feel like it's, oh, you're having a hard time kind of blending things in, it's sticking, I'm getting, you know, kind of shapes everywhere like that, it means the surface is too dry. You're out in Arizona, Utah, whatever, and it's dry, your ink's dry faster, okay? I noticed it when I was demonstrating out there. I love it in terms of being able to move on to other colors really fast, but when it comes to blending, we have to use a little bit more of our our base layers sometimes. So what happens is if it feels like it's sticking and it's not easy to apply gracefully our darker tones, what you do is you just go back in and don't use the same part right here, but put some re-inker fluid on here again, and then go over it again with the lighter tone, and then go back to whatever ink that you happen to be on, and just start blending away in there, okay? Sometimes you do that. Like if I'm working on a larger piece sometimes, by the time I get to the darker ones, sometimes my base layers are dry, and my darker tones just, they're not blending real well, okay? So that's when I'll have to go back in and moisten it again. And, you know, it's easy to do. You just, you know, put that ink on there and just go right over everything, you know, because the lighter color's got a lot of coverage, so it's not like you're using it super strategically or anything like that. You're just kind of lubricating the page a little bit, you know, with that saturated, you know, you're saturating the surface and pulp of the paper a little bit. All right, so anyway, we have a really strong light source in here, and we have a really strong reflected lighting in here as well. I'm not going to go in here and finish this. You know, I think some mist or something like that where you're actually going in and adding lightness into this. You know, the white pen would, you know, really look fantastic in there. I'm kind of fighting the urge to do that, but I want to make these kind of lighting specific strategic, you know, lighting strategy videos a little bit faster, so I'm not finishing these off. But anyways, here's a, you know, a little bit of a blue alcohol marker. You can kind of blend in like that. You can bring in some, some darker blues, like at the base of the you know, trees like that. That's not blending in at all. So you add some of that down. But, and then you go to your lighter blue like this and just blend it. You have to do it, you work fairly fast with the alcohol though. But this is glossy cardstock, so it kind of, you can kind of blend these in like this, okay? I can do it with my blender pen, but a lot of times I just use a lighter color of whatever I'm working in, okay? So you can, you know, you can add some tone down there. I don't know if I would use a, you know, like a black marker, you know, it would just be a little bit too stark. So, I don't know, just, you know, like down here at the base underneath my horse. If you have kind of a good, I don't know, versions of, here's gray right here. Put a little shadow underneath, you know, at the base of some of these trees right here. Or on my fence. I can add a little shadow down here. Okay. These are just kind of like little detailed types of things here. So, you know, the big thing is that the, you know, the overall lighting that we have in here, okay? And again, that lighting scheme, when we look at this, is a source of light, okay? So an area of light right up here, meaning we didn't tone it all out, okay? And then we have an area of light down below. Now in this case, this area right here, okay, it's like right here, just I bisected it. You know, there's a tree right here and a tree right here, so I put a little bit of shadow, but I just kind of brought in a little bit of tone down this way, and a little bit of tone from up this way, so that there's a separation between this area in the distance in this foreground area here, okay? So, I mean, you can have two areas of light, but it's really kind of one, okay? So we have light, dark, light. And what defines light is darkness. So this area of light down here has this perimeter of darkness around it. And then I come in like this, and this area up here has this little perimeter area of darkness, right? Because it's not like, again, we're not working on dark pieces of paper where we're adding in white to define the moon, and white down here doing some kind of bleaching process. We're retaining the light that's inherent in our cardstock. Okay? So it's about retention. Let's see, this horse right here has no color in it at all. You know, it's a blue colored scheme. Let's go and put a little bit of tone on our horse right there. Okay, maybe he has a little bit of a brownish gray or something like that, a little bit of warmth. Okay. All right, so anyway, that is our lesson on easy lighting as it applies to something like this. We're throwing in one extra little twist from something like this. And that's just the bisection of our area of reflected light. So in this one, it's light, dark, light. Light, dark, light. Little bit darkness. It's not too much. Okay, it's not like black in here or something like that. And then light down here. Okay, but it just kind of happens naturally. I mean, down here I put a little bit of a streak of, you know, the colored pencil in here, you know, just so it's not like this round area of light or oval with it just completely, you know, you come into it a little bit like that, and it, you know, makes more sense than just, you know, it's not like this alien, you know, coming down with a spotlight of light down here, although I have done scenes like that before, but, you know, in this case, it's supposed to look more like, you know, I don't know, kind of natural lighting per se. Maybe it's more like a lighting that we would see in a set, you know, stage production of something of, you know, this type of setting right here. Okay, so anyways, I hope these lighting kind of lessons, specific lessons, come in handy for you if you've ever had any questions about that type of thing. We'll come into these pieces and we'll add in some highlights using a paint pen. You'll see how effective these types of things can be in something like this. Maybe I'll add in, you know, some greens down here, you know, and colors out of our color scheme in some reflected types of specular light touches in here, just to add a little bit of extra dimension and lighting at the same time. But until we get to that video, I'm really having fun finishing off some of my stamp sketches from the composition video. All right, so anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comments section. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching.